dads. I think we could probably start putting lacrosse dads in there. So because it's a lot of time, but his son is doing very well in this tournament down in Trenton, doing so well that they had to go back and do it again today. So we wish Sean the best, and Steve will be back certainly with us next week. But today is June 26, 2022. Hot in the Northeast, not what everybody else in the Midwest has been going through with those heat waves, but it's kind of nice weather. It's getting summery, so the dog days are coming. And I wanted to just start off with our monologue, which of course is traditionally sponsored by Coriano Trucking of Summerhill, New York. And the monologue this week, Rob, is last week was the United States Golf Open, and it was just it was won by this young kid, and you got to give him credit. I actually have my country club Brookline U.S. Open official hat on. But this kid, Matthew Fitzpatrick, you see young kids like this, and boy, does he look young. He looks like he's 16 years old, like 27 years old, from England. He won this. We had Scheffler in there, Zalatoris in there, and McIlroy made a run. But you got to give this kid credit because you see, young kids, having this opportunity to win something that significant in golf. And, it's easy to see them, fall apart. We've seen it in the PGA this year. But this kid held it together, and he hit a shot on 18 that went in the bunker, and you said, uh-oh, here we go. Young kid feeling the pressure, wasn't going to win it, and he hit the shot of his life out of the bunker, and it was, it just was an amazing thing to watch because we've seen these young kids come up, right? Cantley, Fleetwood, Bradley, Webb Simpson, Ricky Fowler, and, they play some good golf, and then you wonder, they never get back to the winner's circle like this. But I think this kid's character really showed up, and he held this off. And the funny thing is, it's only the second golfer ever to win the U.S. Amateur and a U.S. Open on the same golf course, and he won it at Brookline at the Country Club, and the only other golfer was Jack Nicklaus. So I just wanted to give a shout out to Matthew Fitzpatrick because he really, and I think that this kid is really going to be a player on this tour because it's so competitive and it's so hard to win. But, when you can hold off a guy like Scheffler, who's the number one player in the world, and it just really was great. And there's also a backstory to that, Rob, was the caddy, Billy Porter. Long-time caddy, and we've seen in golf sometimes that some caddies become just as big as the players they're carrying the bag for. And this guy, Billy Porter, he's been on like Seve's bag, he's been on Darren Clarke's bag, and through 40 years, never carried a bag for a major winner until Matthew Fitzpatrick won. So, he's a guy that doesn't seek the limelight and stuff, but that was a real that was a feel-good story on Father's Day last week at the U.S. Open.
That's awesome. It's awesome. Yeah, I remember when I played golf back in the day. That was the one sport. I was never good at it, obviously. But that was the one sport where the youngster could actually pop in every so often and make a name for themselves, unlike most of the sports.
Right. And, of course, everyone strives, who's going to be the next Tiger Woods. And that comes along once in a generation. But the parity on the PGA Golf Tour is so intense. And you know what made it even better, Rob, was this whole everything going on with this Live Tour and the money. And now Koepka jumps over and he does it. It almost tried to take away from the U.S. Open, but I think it was that awesome and inspiring that somebody like Matthew Fitzpatrick wins, and it was a win-win for golf. And I didn't want to beat on this LIV thing anymore because we've talked about it extensively. So, but that's our monologue this week. And again, it's gratefully sponsored by Coriano Trucking of Summerhill, New York. So Rob, let's move on. Why don't we talk about, because there's a lot going on in the NBA, right? And of course, and we
Don't get me
promised
started.
we wouldn't talk about this Kyrie thing, but that seems to be the headline. But it was also the week of the NBA draft, and I think there was a couple little surprises. Well, one thing that wasn't a surprise, the Knicks didn't do anything.
That was a
That's
total
your team,
surprise.
huh?
That was a total surprise.
How do you explain this? I mean, how?
You can't explain it. Again, being a Nets fan myself, right? You can't explain. Cause I love trolling Knicks fans, but you can't explain how they did nothing. You're telling me not one of those top 15, 20 players could have helped them this season?
Well, I think what's going on with the Knicks, because I mean, obviously, you're right. Out of the first 15 picks, you can get a potentially impact player, right? We've seen guys that, like Jokic didn't get drafted even till the second round. Now he's a two-time MVP winner, right? But overall, I'm not surprised. But if I'm a Knicks fan, I'm just scratching my head, going, I don't understand what you guys are doing. When they made the change and brought Leon Rose in, everyone said, finally, we got a guy that knows what's going on. And apparently not. But the Kyrie Irving thing, I guess, since you're the resident Nets fan, what are your thoughts? Are you going to really pay this guy a max contract, multi-year, for somebody that only comes to work when he wants to?
He's got to realize that he's a great player. He's probably one of the funnest guys in the NBA to watch play, because he's a wizard out there. But he's got to realize that there's repercussions for taking off for this, taking off for that, and not being there for your team and your teammates. Ownership is not going to accept that. And they're finally putting a stand down and saying, look, we want you back, but there has to be some leeway for us to not pay you a max contract because you're not consistent. If your boss, if you're in your job, if you all of a sudden stop showing up, what's going to happen?
They're going to tell you don't show up anymore.
Exactly.
Right.
Now, the only thing, hold on, as a Nets fan, the only thing I worry about in this situation is that KD follows suit. Now, I've been reading every day articles that say either way. Either he's worried about himself and building a brand in Brooklyn, and if Kyrie goes, so be it. We'll get some good pieces back for him. Let's move on to our championship march. Or he's going to say, you know what? Bye. You guys aren't doing anything. I'm leaving too.
Well, I mean, that's what's so unbelievable about the NBA, is that they have this kind of power to do exactly what you just said. And you're right. I don't know what Kevin Durant's thinking on this is. I think he's just as disappointed in the fact that Irving doesn't come to play when he's supposed to. And that was the handshake deal with those two guys. We could do this together, right? And then we saw the Harden thing implode, and now so Kyrie Irving has the option, and this is what kills me, because there's one other player I'm going to bring up, and I don't fault these guys, but it's amazing that he can exercise his option to make $37 million,
36, 37, yeah,
something like that, right? Like John Wall in Washington exercised his option to make $47 million, and he didn't even play last year, and he may never step on a basketball court again. But you're right. Kevin Durant could say, listen, if you don't sign him to a max contract, then I can't win this alone here. And that's a real possibility. But it's amazing to me that they can actually have the ability, right? LeBron James is going to dictate who plays for the Lakers, not the GM, not the coach, who he wants to play. And the money is absurd, but we've talked about that. But I didn't want to dwell on that because the NBA draft, though, there was some really good picks. You look at the first 4 picks, you got to say Banchero was kind of a surprise, right? All the pundits had Jabari Smith going number 1. And those first 4 picks, right? You had Banchero, you had Chet Holmgren, Jabari, and then Jaden Ivey. All right. That's how it's supposed to go, right? The 4 best players, most likely. But do you look at Chet Holmgren and say, is this a Sean Bradley? I mean, he's Jack and the Beanstalk. He's got legs.
He has two trajectories. He's either, like you said, Sean Bradley, right?
Right.
Or he could be a KD. Very similar body styles. And with the skills. I saw a clip of him in high school, obviously, where he just took the ball. He broke the guy's ankles with a cross dribble and went right to the basket and slammed it. He has guard skills.
Yeah, I don't know if he has that athleticism to compare him to Durant, but I could see where you're going with that. But I like this kid Banchero, right? He was kind of a one and done for Duke, right? That's the business of college basketball now. Holmgren, one and done with Gonzaga. I don't know. With Smith was maybe 2 years. Auburn, I don't know. But
Vegas took a bath though. I heard Vegas took a bath on the on that because no one expected Banchero being number 1.
Well, you don't hear my heart breaking for the gamblers in Las Vegas. You know my position on that. Listen, somebody cleaned up. Somebody on the inside found out that Banchero was going to be the number 1.
Yeah, that's why I'm surprised they even have those bets out there because there's always leaks. There's always inside information that,
No question about it. And then the only other thing, we'll see how they pan out, but I really do. If you woke up or stayed up all night to see the Knicks do something and they did nothing, boy, you got to be, get it.
And how do you allow like a team in a similar situation like the Detroit Pistons to get better on your watch? Because they came right back in the lottery, the top 15 picks, and got another guy that's going to help them. I mean, how do you do that? They're both about the same level of rising team, right? And then
it's
so much better.
It's exactly what you just said. Right around you. Look at what the Pistons are doing, right? I mean, look at what Memphis has done. All of this has been going on. New York had more money than anybody, and they can't get it done. They bring in the recycled Kemba Walkers and those guys. And I don't fault Kemba Walker at all, but he wasn't going to be the piece that pushed you over into championship contention. But look at the Grizzlies. Look at these young teams. Look what the Clippers are doing now. I mean, somebody has got to be in charge over there, and I don't know that anybody is. It's bizarre. It's so bizarre.
Actually, what I thought was the best moment of the draft was Jaden Ivey dropped to 5. Detroit took him, and he just lost it. He just lost it because, and I didn't realize his mother is the coach at Notre Dame. So he's been growing up in this environment, for a long time, and he just let it out. And then turns out they have a lot of family connections in Detroit. So that's going to be a pretty cool thing to watch next couple of years.
Yeah, no, he seems like a player for sure.
Yeah.
And there was this one other kid. It was like Benedict Manchurin or something that actually, I think he was like the 15th pick in the draft. And he's coming out and say, LeBron James has to prove to me that he's a better basketball player than I am.
Number 6. Number 6, yeah.
Oh, number 6. Okay.
And then, of course, there's always we have a comment there from Mike Garvey.
Yeah.
They sold their soul for Ewing.
Right. And that's exactly what happened. And that was at a time where the New York Knicks couldn't get any lower. So that's a good thing for Mike to bring that up because they fully expected, and they had the pieces, and they had Pat Riley. But John Starks cost them the NBA championship because he kept shooting and he kept missing. and Riley told him to stop shooting, and he didn't stop shooting, and they lost. So that was man. What was Patrick Ewing was what 1985 draft?
Yeah. Then there was the whole who's that? Charles Johnson with the can't make a layup against the Bulls that 1 year.
Charles Smith.
Charles Smith, yeah.
Yeah.
He couldn't make a layup like
No,
10, 15.
I know. Anyway, so that's our NBA coverage. Obviously, we feel more intrigued by the NFL draft, which was what we did your 4-hour show. We didn't do that for the NBA because it's not after the 7th, 8th pick. You go, whatever,
I tell you, what's funny about these drafts now with these, with the instant gratification of social media. Is that some of these? I find it a little disrespectful, but some of these players' moms, they come out, they're all glammed up. Next thing you know, they're internet superstars.
What, the basketball players?
Like the moms of the players.
Oh yeah.
Started with the guy from the Jets, the quarterback, Zach Wilson. And now it seems every draft now they're focusing on what does the mom look like, and if she's attractive woman, she's a star all of a sudden. Right. It's just crazy how social media does that, right?
Right. Or I think who is it? Patrick Mahomes' mother does chicken soup commercials or something,
Yeah, and then the other guy we have with the Giants who stunk. His mom is all blah, 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 blah. Yeah, he was gone 2 weeks later.
Yeah. I know. It's funny. So Rob, let's move on to the ice because we're getting down the stretch here. I know this isn't your wheelhouse per se, but I got to tell you, we've talked about the NHL playoffs and how unbelievable this was. Steve was going with the Lightning the whole time. I took Colorado, which looked pretty good a couple days ago. They were up 3-1, but you just can't count out the Tampa Bay Lightning. They have just put themselves right back in a position to win this, although I still think Colorado's going to win it. But Tampa Bay's home tonight for Game 6, and being down 2-0 and then down 3-1 and fighting back. That's what you call the heart of champions, and the hockey guys exhibit that all the time.
Now, again, I'm not a hockey fan, but was Colorado expected to go to the finals, or are they a surprise team?
Yeah, I think Colorado is expected to go to the finals. They actually had the most points in the President's Trophy this year, which doesn't necessarily guarantee anything, as you know, certainly in hockey. But, look at these warriors that Tampa Bay has with Stamkos and Point and Palat. They just, they don't give up. I mean, I know John Cooper, who Steve and I have talked about before, we think he's great. I mean, just a great coach. The controversy of the other of Game 4, the goal, there wasn't a controversy about the goal going in because that was obvious on replay. But it didn't have that, he scored, the fanfare because no one saw it at first. But there was, the controversy was that there were 6 men on the ice for Colorado at the time, and the refs didn't get it. But you know what? That's sport. Sometimes, the human element has to come into play. So just what a great series. So Colorado's up 3-2, game 6 tonight in Tampa. So it's going to be exciting. You got to watch it. You got to appreciate what these guys do night after night. And
now, how often? Another question I have as a amateur, kind of a novice hockey fan. How common is it to not have a Canadian team in the finals?
I don't know. I think that's kind of worn off because, over the past, let's say 20 years, right? You've had Pittsburgh in there win the cup, and Toronto hasn't won a cup in 50 plus years. And so it's not like it once was where we talk about dynasties and the Montreal Canadiens. I mean, they were incredible from the 50s to the 70s and even a couple more after in the 80s and 90s. So it's not as uncommon as it was because there are, there's a lot more teams, let's just say, in the U.S. But and next year the Angels will be in the Stanley Cup Finals, so won't have to worry about Canadian teams
We'll see.
next year. Okay.
We'll see.
So a couple other quick things with hockey, and this guy Austin Matthews won the MVP, and it was one of those discussions where Steve and I, and it said I wouldn't have had any problem with Connor McDavid winning it, but when you score 60 goals, you got to win it, and neither one of them was going to win the Stanley Cup this year, but I thought Austin Matthews had just an incredible year scoring 60 goals, and he deserved it. And right here in New York, Vezina Trophy goes to Igor Shesterkin, who, he had some ups and downs in the playoffs, but he's still relatively young. But that's kind of a milestone. We'll be forgetting about Henrik Lundqvist pretty soon with this guy if he continues along this path. And one other note, Rob, was Steve and I, we talked about, right, who's the most coveted guy, from a coach perspective, you would think was Barry Trotz. And, he got let go by the Islanders, and everyone's scratching their head, say, I don't understand that. But there must be some other backstory because, he's from Winnipeg. They offered him the job, and he's actually taken, let's say, a respite from coaching for a while. So I hope there's not more to that kind of a backstory, with somebody like him, because he's good for hockey. He can go in, he could turn a team around, but when guys like Tortorella, people are upset about Tortorella because he's such a disciplinarian. But you know what? Mike Keenan was the same way when he coached the Rangers to the Stanley Cup in 1994. So, I guess it's a team owner preference about who you bring in, but I hope Barry Trotz is okay and not, it's nothing more than just not taking the right job. So we'll see about that. So Rob, what do you think? We talk a little bit about Major League Baseball. Obviously, I think one of the, the hot topic certainly in New York is the year this Aaron Judge is having, and his arbitration hearing was yesterday or on Friday. And I actually had the conversation with somebody, and it really wasn't rocket science to figure it out, but Sports with Mano Mano was right on it. The Yankees offered him 17, they put 21 in, and they split the baby, right? But I think that goes to, that's a good faith sign on this on behalf of the Yankees ownership. They know this guy we have to lock him up. Period. We can't let this, his marquee and his marketability is undeniable. Mm-hmm. So he's going to get this record contract for, I believe, like, you want to talk Bryce Harper money, that kind of money he's going to get to stay in New York. But he's somebody that you have to lock up. I don't think this impacts the overall, let's say, strategy of Judge's team and the Yankees ownership. I think they already have discussed where they need to get to make this happen, and I hope they do. So, it's having a great year.
I mean, we can't do it now because he has to put the pen to paper. Just make the guy the captain already. I think that would mean a lot to him, and that might make him stay and bargain better. I mean, it's one of the greatest. I don't know what the exact phrase I'm looking for, but it's one of the greatest things in sports to be Yankee captain, and not everybody does it, So where else are you going to go and have that mystique about him,
Well, I think that's kind of a foregone conclusion that's going to happen. I mean,
you got to sign first, though. But if you do it now, maybe it makes them think a little bit.
But there is just no possible way that I would see Aaron Judge leaving. If the Yankees offered him $30 million a year and somebody else offered him 35, he would say, I would rather play for the New York Yankees. So he's not going anywhere. And when you look at New York, what's going on, we just talked about this briefly last week. Two of the biggest guys, literally the biggest guys in baseball, are playing for the New York team, right? Alonso for the Mets, Judge for the Yankees, and Pete Alonso has quietly, I don't want to say quietly in a sense that, this is a big surprise that he's hitting home runs, but he seems much more disciplined at the plate, like he's maturing into that kind of Aaron Judge type hitter where he's just feared every time he comes to the plate. He's having a great year too.
I think the Yankees being this successful so far is helping that, because the Mets are kind of under the radar a little bit. I mean, I say under the radar, but the Mets were supposed to be where the Yankees are right now. So the Yankees having that mantle right now is kind of keeping the Mets off the back page a little bit, which is only helping guys like Alonso, do what they're doing.
Yeah, but no, I love watching that kid play, and I think, what? Believe it or not, I think there's a benefit to him being in the National League, even though I think the National League has inferior pitching compared to the American League. But the designated hitter, that means he gets some more time off than Judge, right? And he's not the best first baseman in the world, but he is fearful at the plate, and Judge has got to play the outfield. He's an outstanding outfielder as well. So he's not going to get as many days off, and these big guys that takes its toll over the course of the summer. But so let's see how that pans out. But I'm putting my chips, on the side that Aaron Judge is not going anywhere. And it's going to drag out for a while, obviously. I mean, the season already has 100 games still left, but, it'll go into the off season, but that deal will get done for sure. But how about this? There was a no-hitter in the Bronx yesterday, and it wasn't by the Yankees, right, who've had the pitching and the hitting. It was by the Astros, right? Combined 3 different pitchers. It wasn't one of those on the edge of your seat no hitters, because there was walks in there, and the Yankees had base runners in the 9th and so forth. But they got no hit yesterday, and all the chips have to fall into play in order for a no hitter to happen, and they just seem to fall into place yesterday.
Oh yeah, it happens. It happened to us. Against Houston 2 years ago as well. So,
well, there was also one other before we leave Major League Baseball, and we talked about this guy, this Freddie Freeman. He went back to Atlanta for the first time, and you know what? It was heartfelt. It was genuine. They loved what this guy did for that franchise. He's always been a quality class kid. I mean, you can't help but just say that's what sports is supposed to be about. Not because he left for the money. I think they knew with the Atlanta Braves saying, listen, we just can't pay you. We got to pay these other young kids. So, but you'll forever be an Atlanta Brave. And he got his World Series ring. And but that was a genuinely great story, and the way that the Atlanta fans made him feel when he came back instead of booing him for leaving, right?
Oh, it wasn't his fault, right? Like you said, it wasn't his fault. Yeah.
But that was really a great story. I like this kid. Listen, I would have been happy if the Yankees found the money, and but it's working out for both teams, right? It's working out for the Dodgers, who are already loaded, and it's working out for the Yankees.
We got Rizzo. Rizzo's having a great year.
Yeah, he's having a great year.
Now, what happens? Now, Jim, real quick, what happens if a lot of speculation that Aaron Judge goes across the river, plays for the Mets? Does he get booed as a if he comes back as a Met?
I think that's the only place he could go and get booed. If he went to the Mets, that slams the door on your Yankees legacy, and I think that's important to him.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine. Listen, we've had to digest having Buck Showalter, who we like, as the manager of the Mets. That's been hard enough to watch how he's turned that franchise around, just like we thought he would. But I can't see that happening. Wow, don't even put that in my head because it's
And
inconceivable.
they're saying maybe Red Sox too, but don't forget Bernie Williams was that close from signing with the Red Sox until the Yankees swooped in and signed long term. So
Right, but that's a perfect example of what Aaron Judge, Bernie Williams said, you know what? I will forever be referred to as one of the great Yankees. It means something to those guys. And listen, I couldn't see Bernie Williams ever going to Boston just as much as I can't see Judge going to the Mets. I just can't see it. Anyway, so baseball is underway. NFL, listen, I guess there's just one topic and one topic alone. Get it out of the way. Deshaun Watson, right? So this hearing is going to happen, and it's looking like it's going to be a year suspension. And I think they've already got the deal done. I just don't think it's been publicized yet because something has to happen. And when you look about it, again, if I was a Cleveland Browns fan, I wouldn't renew my season tickets for the rest of my life. But they did. They made the move. I think they knew to expect that he's potentially facing a season-long suspension. And it's not going to cost him much. He's still going to get the money through the deal that they gave him. But so you look at it and you say, yeah, but he wasn't convicted of anything. But he did settle 20 lawsuits against the 24 people, right? Mm-hmm. You would tend to think if there's nothing there, I'm not settling. Settling for what, right? But so I think that's coming. It's probably going to come down probably this week. But I think we're looking at a year-long suspension for this
guy. And unfortunately, Cleveland was smart enough to give him no money this year. And then knowing this is going to happen. And I only wish there was that he gets suspended next year when his money really kicks in. A lot of teams are pissed off about that too.
And look what, if you're a Cleveland Browns fan, this Baker Mayfield no longer wants to play for the Cleveland Browns. So he's a kind of a quarterback in limbo, right? The way he was kind of treated, whether you like him or don't like him. I think he's an average quarterback. I don't think he's an above elite quarterback. But that's going to, they're going to end up, Mayfield will slip on a banana peel and say, oh, I twisted my knee. I can't play. So that whole franchise is going to face the consequences of this for a long time to come.
Yep.
A free plug.
Again, I don't even know how this guy can show his face in public anymore. I mean, I guess if we have that kind of money, it doesn't matter. But
look
how do you look at this guy and not like cringe?
Because we're supposed to give him the benefit of the doubt, but and I get it. I feel the same way. And he got rewarded with $280 million. It's amazing. And that would come from the season ticket holders. That's why I'd say I'm not contributing to this circus at all. That's why the Cleveland Browns haven't won crap in 60 years,
Yep.
So anyway, enough with the NFL for now. Training camp's about, a month away?
This is the boring time of the NFL. The 1 month where it's like, unless there's a traffic violation or a DUI or nothing goes on.
Right. We covered the Brady coming back. We covered the Rodgers holding out. We covered it all. So
I'll tell you one note, Jim, real quick.
Yep.
I remember, in 2007, I was living in Las Vegas still. And that's the same year with the NBA Finals were there. It was a great, it was an awesome experience. But we remember Pac-Man Jones?
Yeah.
He shot the bouncer at the strip club.
Oh, trouble followed him all over the place. Yeah.
But recently, I don't know if you saw this. It doesn't make amends in my mind, maybe a little bit, but he actually adopted. Remember Chris Henry, the receiver? He died somehow from the Bengals. Yes, it was kind of he wasn't really I don't know. I mean, you know him from that time, but a good story was he actually adopted his sons after he passed away, and he's making them good people, and they're going to be NFL, they're going to be college prospects and everything. So hey, you know what? The guy's a jerk off, but at least he's trying to do a little good in his life.
Okay,
So I think it's.
Well, we'll see if Mr. Watson takes that and then adopts anybody's kids. We'll see. Got enough money to do it. So, Rob, let's move on to tennis because Mike Garvey's been patiently waiting for us to address them. There's a couple of stories out of Wimbledon. To me, that is like the Masters, right? The Masters in golf that's what the trophy everybody wants to win. Wimbledon is the same way in tennis. And I saw a very interesting fact that over the past 20 years, the only winners of Wimbledon on the men's side were named Federer, Djokovic, Nadal, and Murray. So that's 20 years that one of those four guys have won that championship. And now you got some other little stories going on, right? There's the banning of Russian players from playing at Wimbledon.
Oh, wow.
And that affects Daniel Medvedev. He's the number one player in the world, not going to participate. But when we talk about, Wimbledon, and we know we're seeing the end of an era with the Federer, Nadal, right? It may not be this year, but it's coming. Obviously, it's coming. But it's time for these young kids, and you see guys like Berrettini or Alcaraz. I know Mike Garvey's going to laugh, but I know he likes this kid Nick Kyrgios, but he's got to win some major Grand Slam tournaments before I'm going to put him in that. But this is the time for somebody to jump in and be the next Roger Federer, Rafael Nadal, Novak Djokovic. And I don't know who it's going to be. My political position on this. I don't think the players themselves should be punished for the actions of a political situation, but they are, and they're not playing there. So the men's is wide open. And listen, I think Novak Djokovic won the last 3 Wimbledons anyway. So he's just as good on grass as he is. That's why he's the number one player, of all time. But that's interesting. But here's another story, right? Serena Williams, we mentioned last week, is coming back. 40 years old. Is this one of those Cinderella stories? But you never know. And why? Because on the women's side, it's exactly the opposite of what it was for the men, right? Over the past 20 years, you can't even name all of the different winners of the Grand Slam on the Winners Tour. That's parity in tennis. That's really reached a good height for the women. But one of Sabalenka, one of the top women in the world, she's affected by the Medvedev Russian ban on players at Wimbledon. So that leaves the door open. And I don't know that she could close that door at 40 years old, because I think there's a lot of parity on the women's side, even more so than the men. But I enjoy Wimbledon, and Wimbledon's good because you could get up at 7:00 in the morning and watch, a match, just like watching the British Open in golf. So, what do you think? Do you think Serena Williams can really come off, and make that kind of a move at 40 years old?
I think if she does something like that, it would be the U.S. Open in front of her.
I don't think there's any question that she's going to play the U.S. Open, because she's
there's a swan song type one last champion. It would be U.S. Open.
Well, I think she believes she could win Wimbledon. I truly do. I don't think I think she would have waited and made that announcement, just like you said, to play the U.S. Open and make that dramatic, run, deep into the tournament. But I think she believes she can win. I'm not going to be surprised. I just think there's so many young women. Raducanu, she's another one that's, you got to keep an eye on these people. So the road for her is tougher than the road for Djokovic and Nadal to repeat at Wimbledon. That's my point. So anyway, so Rob, Random Points of Interest, and Random Points is sponsored by Lynch Toyota of Manchester, Connecticut, who gave us a 2 thumbs up on the picture we posted last week.
I gotta find it.
We appreciate the support from Lynch, and there they are. 1-800-646-4321. That'll get you all your Toyota needs. So listen, I wanted to just bring up one quick thing, and we glazed over it. I didn't want it to overshadow the monologue, but Brooks Koepka, that was kind of a shocker. So I think that's going to open the door for more of these guys. But I wanted to give a shout out to Colin Morikawa, who's one of these young guns that I told you about, right? He's already got 2 majors. He said, listen, leave me alone. I'm not going anywhere. This is the best competition on the planet, and that's where a golfer sets himself apart, by beating the best. I loved it. He's been a classy kid all along. And listen, Koepka, again, we told, go take the money, but you can't come back to the PGA Tour, and that's that. And I think Colin Morikawa stands for a lot, like the Rory McIlroy. He was very strong in his stance, and support both of those. Also from the world of golf, Sir Nick Faldo stepping out of the booth after 18 years. I loved Nick Faldo in the booth. He was so blunt and direct, and he had some whimsical, comical type things. What a great combination, him and Nance covering, the best golf tournaments in the world. And I didn't know, but somebody said, oh, does that mean he's going to be the broadcaster at the Live Golf Tour? And I said, I don't think so. I don't think so. First of all, they don't even have a contract yet with a major sports network. But
that's surprising.
Not only was Nick Faldo a great player, but he was a great announcer. Give him a shout out because he's good.
I find that surprising.
Huh?
I find it surprising they don't have a major sports network behind them yet.
They're getting it.
This is a dog-eat-dog world out there, and somebody is gonna, do it just for the.
But they needed to get some names first, and that's going to only bolster their case. But somebody will pick them up, right? No doubt about it. And I saw a comment. I don't know. Some people didn't seem to like Nick Faldo as a player, because he was kind of, he didn't really talk to the press at all. So I know some people he rubbed people the wrong way as a player, and he looks exactly like Harrison Ford did back in Indiana Jones days. That was my celebrity sports lookalike reference. How about this? So the number 1 quarterback recruit in the country is finally selected where he's going to play football. And that's Arch Manning, who's not Eli or Peyton's son. It's Cooper's son. But this was one of the most highly recruited players in recent memory. And he's going to play for the Longhorns of Texas. Surprised?
I'm surprised. I've read a lot about this past week. I'm surprised because he's one of 5, I think, perfect recruiting scores ever. Right. 1.000. And one of the guys who are just a step below that, the 99999, is the guy who's there now. Ewers or something. Quinn Ewers, I believe.
Oh, well, he was the kid that went to Ohio State first and then transferred over to Texas.
So I'm surprised that he actually put that upon himself, because this kid's going to. So Ewers will start this year, right? And then next year walks into a competition. So it's kind of surprising he would do that to himself because, hey, maybe he falters, right? Maybe he doesn't get the job next year. And then what?
Well, but that's what college football you could do. If you don't like it, you could just go anywhere and play next week. So that option that has literally come into play, right? He's got the number one recruit last year in yours, and now Arch Manning.
I admire the fact that he wants to pave his own path, though. I do admire that.
Hey, listen, that's what Peyton did. He Archie went to Ole Miss, Eli went to Ole Miss, but Peyton went to Tennessee, and now this guy's setting his own mark. You're right about that. That's a good point.
And you know what? I think it makes college football a little better when Texas has some relevancy.
Yeah, it's been a long time since they've been a long
relevant. Time. We all remember that game with Vince Young when he dominated USC.
That was a great game. A great game. Yeah. But I remember even going back, Ricky Williams was awesome and Earl Campbell. These guys were, oh my God, one of my all-time favorites. So listen, in baseball, college baseball, we're just talking about Ole Miss and Oklahoma in the College World Series final. First time in years that they're not even weren't even in the top 10 seeds of the tournament. And
oh wow,
you're going for it. And what would be unique if Oklahoma wins it? Oklahoma women's softball won the national championship. It would be the first time that's happened. But it's great baseball. It really is. It's exciting baseball. So check it out. But Ole Miss, surprisingly, I thought is up 1-0, best of 3. See how it goes. So, Rob, we got a couple of notable passings this week.
Real quick, before we get to the notable passings, apparently there's a new baseball coach at St. Mary's.
Go ahead. Give me
your
Gale
I'm just saying. Dennis Holtz is, I don't know if he's kind of stepped down to be full-time AD and, for the school and whatnot, but there's a new coach at St. Mary's, so we'll see next year. People are excited about him, so.
Well, listen, you're supposed to be a sports guy. We would expect to get the scoop about who it's
I'm still digging. I'm still trying to get some information on that.
Okay, well, then you got to break the news when you found the bones. So anyway, a couple of quick notable passings. Longtime Chicago Bears beat writer John Mullen. His nickname was Moon Mullen, and 25 years on the beat with the Chicago Bears. I saw some pieces by him. He was a pretty decent guy, very knowledgeable sports guy. He passed away. Caleb Swanigan. And I remember this guy. He was a player at Purdue. And he was actually a Big Ten Player of the Year, was a really good, All-American. I think he was absolutely all Big Ten. But he was a real good player and didn't really have much, success in the NBA, but that's far and few between for NBA players. But he was a good player back in that day. He was only 25 years old. My goodness. And speaking of pretty early to go is Jalen Ferguson, linebacker from the Baltimore Ravens, 26 years old. And no cause of death. But, what's notable about Jalen Ferguson, he's the all-time NCAA sack leader. That's pretty notable. When played at Louisiana Tech, and had mild success, but he was only 26 years old as well. So but also Rob, from then Steve wanted us to make sure and of course we were going to bring it up anyway, but Tony the Goose Siragusa passed away at 55 years old. And we remember him. He was a very good player. I remember him I think he went to Pittsburgh, if I remember correctly. I think he's out of Pitt. And he won a championship with the Ravens on that. He was part of that defense that won them the championship. Because you weren't going to win it with Trent Dilfer as your quarterback unless you had a great defense to go with. But he made a good name for himself. And you know what? I ran into him a couple of times at a Giant game. He was doing the coverage on the field. That was kind of revolutionary. And And he was a very nice guy. And everybody that I've ever spoken to that has run into him said he was a very nice, funny guy. And that's pretty young. He's only 55. I didn't see any.
Those restaurants he had for a couple of years of Tiffany's.
Yeah.
I read a story also where apparently he lived down somewhere in Morris County area or something.
Okay.
And he was just sitting out there in the stands or in the field watching Del Barton practice, right? And they noticed he was there, and they kind of, hey, come down. And he ended up like almost adopting the school as family and helping him out as a volunteer coach and showing the D-line how to do things. I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah.
I tell you, it's a little bit of an eye-opener. I'm a pretty big guy myself, so you kind of wonder at 55, what was it?
Well, there was some family history of some heart disease. His father died young as well,
Okay.
but he made a decent living for himself, and he never took that fame for granted. And you know what?
He was fun. He was a fun guy in the sidelines.
He was.
You know what? Of all these years of having the attractive woman do it, which is awesome, right? He had a little different. He was the guy who was there in the trenches and had that perspective.
That's exactly right. And he got our respect from Sports with Mano and Mano. I'll tell you that. He was a good guy, notable. And one other, kind of an old timer, but somebody my father or your father would certainly have remembered, Hugh McElhaney. He was a running back for the first guy of the San Francisco 49ers to have his number retired. 93 years old, Hall of Famer, had a great career. Actually, last couple of stops were the Giants and a couple other teams, played for the Vikings, but he was notable and beloved as a San Francisco 49er. And the kids today's day and age that wouldn't recognize the significance, but the older generation, I remember my father talking about Hugh McElhaney, say he was outstanding as a player. 93 years old.
Did you get to the Seinfeld guy last week?
Yes, we did. Philip Baker Hall. We talked about him.
Okay.
Yeah. So, Rob, thanks for joining in and pinch hitting, and wishing Steve good luck. And please send us an email at sportswithmano.
He sent me a video real quick. Let's show this before we go.
Huh?
I think it's his son scoring.
I would assume so.
Okay. I mean, the stick don't make that sound. Yeah!
John, nice pass, John.
John,
Great pass, John. Passing, boys, nice passing.
And all it does is increase the Monahan legacy of sports athletes on our chain. So
One thing, that's the one. That is the. I'm sorry. That's the one thing I can never see myself ever doing, is being a goalie of a lacrosse team. That's a cue ball coming at you. How many miles an hour?
Hey, listen. I don't. It's not one of my all-time favorite sports. I don't know a lot about it other than the Gate brothers from Syracuse about 25 years ago. But good luck to them. And listen, we'd love to hear from you folks. So send us an email at sportswithmanoandmano@gmail.com. Rob, enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you back here next week.
You got it. Take care.
See you.